You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. So I have a great one for you all, especially you CrossFit enthusiasts this week. I had the opportunity to sit down with CrossFit Games athlete Leka Fineman, who at age 56 is competing in her 5th CrossFit Games this week, as we speak, in Madison, Wisconsin. For those who are unfamiliar with the CrossFit Games, they are a multi-day international competition designed to crown the fittest men and women on Earth. And what makes the games so challenging and very compelling to watch is that the athletes have no idea what's in store for them going into the games. The events in the competition are not announced beforehand, and the athletes know that the past games have included everything from cyclocross bike racing to distance swimming to handstand walking, carrying around odd heavy objects, you name it. These athletes are essentially training for the unknown, which is wild. And Leka Fineman, she is there for it. She has got such a compelling story. Leka actually grew up on a commune in California, where she wasn't exactly encouraged to be competitive. She didn't even find CrossFit until she was in the midst of a divorce as a mom with 2 young daughters at age 40. She qualified for her first games at age 50 and has managed to stay in the game, literally, ever since, despite all the issues that come with going through the menopause transition. Along with her own competitive pursuits, Leka is a certified CrossFit, weightlifting, gymnastics, nutrition, and XPT Performance Breathing Coach, and her expertise is in providing women with the tools they need to handle stress and optimize their body's natural ability to recover while feeling strong, confident, and empowered in their lives and bodies through every stage of life. You can learn more about her at lekafineman.com. I will put a link into the show notes for that. And I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. All right, before we get to it, as always, check us out on Instagram and Facebook at Feisty Menopause. Sign up for my free weekly menopause blog at feistymenopause.com. You can learn more about our Level Up Menopause membership there as well, where we sit down with experts each week to get our questions answered. And speaking of getting questions answered, remember that you can send me a voicemail at our SpeakPipe webpage and get your question answered on the show. You'll find a link to that in the show notes as well. Finally, big thanks to Previnex for their longtime support of the show. I just got a killer review for their Joint Health Plus product that I would just love to share here. It's from Brenda. She gives it a 5-star review and says, it really works. I have tried many things to help my joint pain in my knees, glucosamine, collagen, turmeric, tart cherry. Nothing was working. 1 month in of Previnex combined with my physical therapy, and I was able to run for the first time in 2 years, and my knee was not all swollen and painful afterwards. Goodbye, orthopedic surgeon. Hello, Previnex. What more can we say? Thank you, Previnex. You are the best. All right, enough of me. Let's have a few words about those awesome sponsors and get on with the show. All right, well, good morning, Leka. I am really stoked to have you here because I have been looking for a CrossFit athlete for 2.5 years. And I've had a couple on. I had Shauna Norton on, but it was harder to find. I've had plenty of endurance athletes, but it's been harder to find sort of a consistent drumbeat of the CrossFit athlete. So I'm very happy that you reached out and that we connected.
Yay. Well, I'm honored to be here. As I said, I'm a huge fan of your podcast. I've been listening since the beginning. And
Nice.
I was like, I don't think she's had a CrossFit athlete on there.
And not for lack of trying. It's been, so I am. So let's talk a bit. You have an interesting, I listened to another podcast you're on, did a little digging in, and you have a pretty interesting background. Let's talk about how you got into CrossFit. I mean, maybe growing up on a commune is a natural bridge to it, but how did that all happen?
Yeah. growing up on a commune in Northern California, I was very active. I spent most of my childhood outdoors, riding horses, climbing trees, surfing, doing yoga. But I think, thinking back on it now, I was never encouraged to participate in traditional competitive sports growing up. I think that my mom chose to live on a commune in this communal lifestyle as a way, for a single mom to be supported and sharing childcare. And so it's sort of this like alternative break away from the norm. And the thought of like being competitive was just not like something that was fostered or supported. So I
That's
was
interesting.
never,
And it makes sense.
yeah, I mean, it was more of like this radical feminist, very forward thinking. They were like creating a new culture and society. And so it was more of like a focus on equality and community rather than like the individual, which was great. I learned a lot of, really important values, but the whole notion of like being competitive as an individual was not something that was instilled, as a childhood. So, and as a kid, really, like I had to, there was like one softball team that I was on, but when I wanted to play basketball in high school, it was like I had to, hitchhike to practice. And I rode horses growing up, but it was always like something I did kind of on my own. There was another girl there that did it with me too, but it just wasn't like supported really. I didn't feel like that. Anyway, so fast forward, I did yoga, I did Pilates, was always very active, but it wasn't until I was 40 that I was introduced to CrossFit by my younger brother, who at the time was going to college in San Diego State, and he was introduced to CrossFit. This was like 2007, so it was really kind of just the beginning of CrossFit. It
Yeah,
was,
CrossFit was definitely sort of getting into the water at that point,
yeah,
right?
it was very
Yeah.
underground though, and wasn't mainstream at all. And he was working at what is now a big gym, CrossFit Invictus. It was not then; it was like called something else. But I went down there, and he, he'd been talking about it. He was like, this thing called CrossFit. It's amazing. It's like, it was really like he was just like a fanatic about it and wouldn't shut up. And so I, at the time, was very into my yoga practice. I was doing Ashtanga yoga and Pilates and all these other things. And I really just did it like to get him off my back and to make him stop talking about it. But immediately I was hooked. Like I went into this place that was just this big, warehouse with all these really strong looking women, and everyone was just super welcoming. And we did this little workout. And I was like, flat on the floor, like you hear about people talk about, the first time they do CrossFit. And then he moved up to Oakland to live with me and my now ex. We were my marriage was just starting to fall apart. And he started working at a gym that is CrossFit Oakland, which was the gym, my first gym. And I started going there. And I did the beginning, the introduction with my now ex. We did it together, like this series of like 8-week on-ramp thing, they call it.
Yep.
And I at that time I'd never lifted weights like with a barbell. I really I couldn't run around the block. I didn't know how to jump rope. I didn't know how to do anything. Like I was athletic and had body awareness, but like all of this was completely new to me. And it was really hard. And my ex was like this, amazing athlete, D1, water polo player. Like he could do everything. And it was just like, I was so mad and frustrated, and I just wanted to get better. And I stuck with it, and he didn't. And I immediately was just like immersed in this amazing, welcoming community of these really strong women. And it was just a really good time. Like it saved my life. My marriage was falling apart, and I found this outlet for, all the stress, and I found this supportive community. And that was the beginning.
And you had kids too?
Yeah, I had two kids, 5 and 8 at the time, two daughters. And I started going, like I bought a 10 pack of classes, and I kind of I was still doing my yoga, and I was surfing at that time, a lot. And then the gym moved to, I got a new job, and it was coincidentally like down the street from work. So I started going, on my lunch break, and then I started going, like, 5 days a week. And I really kind of got into the rhythm and routine of it, and started really connecting with more of the people, and really immersed in the community. And it became, a big part of my life. And, but still at that point, I never thought of myself as a competitor. It wasn't like, there were people in that gym that were very competitive. Like, that was one of the very first gyms in CrossFit Oakland was, they had a team that went to the CrossFit Games in the very beginning. They had some really strong competitive female athletes. So I knew that was like part of it, but it was not for me. Like, I was like, oh no, I'm not a competitor. That's not who I am. I just didn't identify as an athlete at all. That came later. And that was a big switch. Like, once I started to think about actually getting stronger, like I remember I started like drinking protein shakes. Like, I got some protein powder, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna, I started like thinking about actually fueling, for my workouts. Like, I need to eat, I need to replenish. And I always like had eaten really well, but it was just these little shifts in my mindset that started to happen. And the coaches were, Mike Minium, he was the owner and founder. And then, some of the other coaches, everyone there like became, my people, they're still like some of my best friends today, all these amazing women. But Mike was like, what about we used to do these things called throwdowns. Like, they were these little, local community competitions amongst gyms, and their, benefits, or, just gatherings in the community. And I would participate. And he's like, you should do this one or this one. And so little by little, I was kind of like sucked into it, and I loved it. I mean, every time I started to feel like, oh, it was just so fun. It was like this spirit of camaraderie, and everybody kind of in it together. But I still wasn't the, competitor. And then I think it wasn't until I was 45. So I've been doing it like about 5 years. And they at that time just started the master's division. So the master's division used to begin at 45. It's now 35. We call them the baby masters now. But I did the CrossFit Open. So the Open is a worldwide online competition, and it's actually the first step in qualifying for the CrossFit Games. And all the gyms participate in it. It's like something that the community does. And CrossFit's very smart about this. It used to be, over the course of 5 weeks, there'd be one workout a week, and they release the workout on Thursdays. And then you have until Monday to complete it and enter your score into the online leaderboard.
Yep.
And the first workout is usually something that everybody can do. Like, it's a very, it'll be like a movement that, like burpees, or like, something that like, everybody can participate in. So it gets the whole community involved. And then, over the course of the 5 weeks, the workouts may get progressively more difficult. And now there's like series of qualifying, rounds after that. But in the beginning, everybody did the Open. And so I did the Open, and that was the year, I think it was, the first workout was a whole bunch of burpees, and I was doing this yoga practice. So I was really good at that movement, getting down and up. And so I did pretty well. And then I was like, oh, okay, I just got sucked in. Every year that happens, the Open just sucks you in. And so I think I did a local competition, and I was terrible. There were some movements that I couldn't do. I still couldn't jump rope. I still struggle with double unders. But I just kept at it. And little by little, just kept getting involved more and more. And I competed on a team they used to have regionals. Now they have semifinals. It kind of changes, the qualifying system changes every year. But that year, well, let's see, that maybe a few years later, 2014 was the year that I started really competing. I was on the team for regionals because one of the other young women ended up qualifying as an individual. So there's a spot on the team. So they pulled me in. I was like, totally out of my league, the youngest person probably in the whole, maybe there was a few other older people, but I felt like I was the youngest. But it was just this, it was so much fun. And it was such an incredible experience to get to, compete at regionals on a team. And it was, I loved it. I just kept like, it just kept getting, more and more fun, more and more challenging. Every time you think you get better, there's like a new thing. There's always, something to learn. So yeah, that was 2014. And I started doing more, a little bit bigger competitions. There used to be this competition called NorCal Masters in Northern California that was pretty big. People would fly in from all over. I started doing that the first year. I didn't do very well. I think I didn't make it to, I was like 8th place, I think, the first year I did it. But yeah, it just, I kept on, I just stuck with it, I think. And that's kind of been, that's been my trajectory with CrossFit, really.
So how do you go from, doing the open and I see that you just like if there's any theme, you just sort of keep getting pulled along and pulled into this sport and sticking with it. Then at what point do you decide that you want to go for the games? I mean, I believe in my
Right.
mind, I think you were around 49. I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And like, what else is going on in your life at this point? Because you're going through your 40s. Now you're like going into your late 40s and thinking about the games. You've got to be somewhere in the menopause transition at this juncture. I mean, like what does
Right.
this
Great
period look
question.
like from 49 to 50, from 45 to 50?
Yeah, life was crazy at that point in time. I had gone through my divorce. I was basically single mom with 2 young girls. I mean, my ex was in the picture. They would go to him every other week, like Wednesday night, and then every other weekend. So, but they basically lived with me. I was working full time. When before I got divorced, I was a wardrobe stylist. So I traveled all over the world, working on advertising shoots for, what used to be print magazines.
Oh, I was in the print magazine world.
Yeah.
I probably met people just like you who would
I
come
did a
in and
lot of
dress the
stuff for,
models. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. The Yoga Journal. I did a lot of stuff. I did a
Yep.
lot of advertising for cruise lines. So I traveled all over. I loved it. I mean, so I had, back up a little. I had worked in the fashion industry as when I was younger, and I think that was part of also my. This is a slight tangent, but it relates. My inspiration to get away from that was being in the fashion industry and seeing, like, that was the time of Kate Moss and
Oh,
like
I know.
chic, and that whole notion of, you can never be too skinny, right? And so all of us in this era of internalizing this like notion of, just trying to be skinny, restrictive eating, that whole thing that I think is maybe like starting to crumble. But I find that women of our ages are still like, that's
Mhm.
just instilled in us. And
Mhm.
so, getting into CrossFit and seeing this, this totally different perspective of what can my body do rather than how do I look, or,
Mhm.
trying to like fit into a certain shape or size. But I was still kind of in that and wanting to get out of it. So my divorce, it was like really this whole like sort of shift in not only how I identified as starting to like think about, well, what can my body do? Like, how can I perform rather than like, how do I look? But also sort of a career shift. So because I was now single mom, it was really hard to travel. So I ended up getting a job as an executive assistant for a biotech company that actually my father was involved in. So I was supporting this CEO of this biotech company, but it was a great job. It was just stability, and it was down the street from the CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
So that was, I was working, doing that. I ended up getting another job. I started working at Pandora, the music company, an executive assistant to the chief technology officer. So I was still traveling. I was doing events globally, and I had these 2 girls, my daughters. So life was just crazy. Like it was a lot. There was a lot going on. And I, now looking back, I definitely was in perimenopause. I mean, I remember going to I was seeing this great nurse practitioner at the time, and I was having these night sweats, and I was like mood swings and like all those things. And now I was like, oh yeah, I was totally in perimenopause. And then I continued working in the corporate world. I was working at another tech company. So that was like more and more getting involved in CrossFit. You asked like when I started to shift from thinking about going to the games. I started doing a little, better every year. Like one year, I think I was like 35th or something. And I was like, oh, maybe I could go to the games, but it was like already into the season. And I knew that like, if that was something that I wanted to do, it couldn't be like an afterthought. Like it needed to be something that was intentional. I mean, that's for me anyways. Maybe some people just sort of wind up as a fluke qualifying, but it seems to me that it was like something that I needed to, plan for, train for. And I started to, work with a coach. I'd always sought out coaches. Around that time, that was when I really focused on getting stronger. I started lifting a lot more. I really like got over that whole fear of getting big and bulky like that. I realized that was just ridiculous. I leaned into just getting stronger. And I started working with Arnold Shua, who was a coach. He was involved in the gym, and he had another gym that was connected to CrossFit Oakland called Endgame Athletics. And he was kind of leading the competitors. So there was a team that year that was training for the games. And that was when I decided I wanted to qualify. See, I was 49. So I was about to enter a new age division. In CrossFit, they have 5-year age brackets. So it's, 50 to 54 I was entering the 50. So, every year you enter a new age division, you're like, you have a little bit of an advantage because you're younger than everyone. And every year, that advantage makes a difference. So that was 2017, and I ended up qualifying. And so at that time, I was working at a tech company, Intercom. It was a startup. I was supporting the head of sales. It was an international company, so I was traveling globally. I was producing events internationally, and I had my kids. And I was, looking back now, like I pulled up some notes because I had some blood work done, because I started working with a nutrition coach when I was training, because I was like, okay, I feel, I know I felt pretty dialed in with my nutrition, but I was always like bordering on feeling like I was too skinny, like I needed to put on weight, and I was struggling with that. So I started working with this nutrition coach, Matt Walrath. He had a company called Beyond Macros, and I started learning about macros and tracking my macronutrients and making sure I was getting enough protein and and I was totally under fueling. And my blood work showed that I had a high white blood cell count, and I had, I took some notes here, low testosterone. So the high white blood cell count, it can come from overexercise, right? It can come from stress. And the low testosterone, it also could be, from all this overtraining and under fueling, and that can lead to like adrenal fatigue. So I was having these like brain fog. Like I remember I was supposed to book, I would just like forget things at work. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And now it's like, oh yeah, adrenal fatigue and brain fog. Like it was totally perimenopausal symptoms combined with all the stress. It was all related, under fueling, overtraining. I don't even know how, like, And then I qualified for the CrossFit
I was
Games.
gonna say, how did you do at the games, but you still qualified?
Yeah, my life that was it. I was working, and I was taking care of my kids, and I was training, and that was all I was doing. So in a way, it becomes, I mean, it's very challenging and very hard, but it also, as you get more and more focused, or for me anyways, it becomes a little bit easier because I'm just only doing those things. And, there's like, people talk about trying to balance and the idea of balancing everything. For me, it always feels like things are weighted. Like it's just, I'm more weighted in doing this and less in that. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's hard. The balance part is really hard. And now, so I qualified in 2017. Life was just crazy. But the community, which drew me in the beginning, was what supported me and kept me going then. And, having that team that I was training with also, all these young kids, in their 20s and 30s that were like so much energy. And it was so great to be in that supportive training environment, having an amazing coaches. It's like I built this whole team. My chiropractor, it was just like this super supportive environment. So that really kept me going. And then, so then I ended up quitting my corporate job, and I started coaching, and I got my level 1. I started coaching. I actually started coaching before I got my level 1. I started this thing called Garage Fit in my garage. I had this really cool garage gym at home that I built out. My brother had helped me build it actually years ago. We put in a pull-up bar. We just started collecting equipment, and I started training some women in my neighborhood. And then I started coaching in the gym. I was coaching in 2 gyms, and that became my work. So I was in the gym all the time. That's what I was doing. So I qualified again in 2018, and then again in 2019. So my first year at the CrossFit Games, I had been so focused on just getting there. I once I got there, I was just like deer in the headlights. Like, oh my God, I'm here. And I was just like fraught with this imposter syndrome. Like I didn't know, I was just, it was so much fun. Like, it was just so exciting to be there, but I wasn't even thinking about like trying to win. That wasn't like not even on my radar. I ended up, so the first year I went, they take the top 20. That's gone down. It's kind of gone back and forth. So I ended up in 8th place out of 20, which I felt pretty good about. The woman who podiumed actually was, she got popped for taking illegal substances, right? She was taking something that was, so I ended up moving up to 7th place because of that. And then the next year, I think I was in 11th that year. I sprained my ankle really badly during competition, but it was super fun. I had a great year. And then 2019, they only took 10, and I wound up in 8th place that year. So then that year, I was it was my 3rd year in that age division. So there were all those women just coming up that were these like powerhouse. I mean, another thing about competing at the CrossFit Games for me is just being amongst all the other competitors. Like it's, I got into the sport. I was drawn in by the community. I met all these amazing women. And then as you continue, at least for me, and I see this amongst other competitors too, you start to move away from the community. I mean, there's still the community there, but like now, I'm pretty much training alone by myself in a corner. Because you're doing your own individualized programming. You're not taking group class. So getting to go to the games and being immersed in the community again is like, it's just this, like, it's food for your soul for me. Like the first year, especially meeting all these other women from all over the world was just so incredible. Just seeing like, women from Australia and England and Africa, like that they're doing this stuff too, like the same as me. They're like me, but that was just, and now, like, I've been doing this for so long, they've become friends. So getting to see them, like, I'm so excited this year to get to see these women that I've been competing alongside for all these years that are just as insane as I am, and leading these lives and like trying to do this crazy thing. So that's another part of it. It's the community has kind of evolved and has a different meaning and another level of support.
I heard
So
that
no,
you
we got
got
off
a
on a tangent.
mental, I'm sorry, I didn't step on you. I heard you got a mental performance coach at some point in here. When did that happen and what was that process?
Yeah. So, that first year when I qualified, I realized that my mindset, my confidence was just needed some work, let's just say. And I had started, I was like listening to some apps, like I was doing, I had always like meditated from a very young age because I started practicing yoga so young. So I knew about these things, right? But it wasn't with any real focus. So I was introduced to this amazing man, Grant Parr, by a former mentor that I'd had when I was at Pandora, Joanna Bloor. She connected me with Grant, and Grant is a mental performance coach, and he has this podcast called 90% Mental, and he invited me to be on his podcast. And we connected and we started working together, and I am still working with him. So we've been working together now since after I qualified. So after the 2017 season. And that has made a huge difference. So just working on my mindset and my, mental performance as an athlete. It's, I think it's kind of probably cliche, or you hear this that like, it's everything happens between your ears, the difference between good and great is all your mindset. And I've come to really believe it. I can see it, in my own performance. And it's, so I was listening to one of your guests, is it Carly, or she was talking
Kara?
about mindset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kara
Yeah.
Bradley. Mhm.
Yeah. And she mentioned, the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. That was, a book that I had read actually before I started working with Grant, but it's the whole notion of, growth mindset versus
Right.
fixed mindset, and the fact that, you can learn from your failures and there's always opportunity for growth and getting better. And, if you think of your mindset as a collection of your, thoughts and attitudes and beliefs, and looking at, so Grant has these little acronyms that he uses, MVP, meditation, visualization, and breath. So those are some of the things. P for positive self-talk. So it's our language, and becoming aware of, how we're talking to ourselves, how we're imagining and seeing what we're doing. So I spend a lot of time working on visualization, seeing myself doing the movements, meditating, and, training myself to be able to respond to a situation instead of react. So, it applies to everyday life and especially in sport, so that when you're, in that super stressful heat of competition, you're able to respond and stay in that state of calm instead of just like, always acting with this like heart rate up, like a state of frenzy. So yeah, I still speak with him almost every week, and it's, it's a constant, it's a process. It takes work, but, another one of my coaches, I think, I was in like a business mastermind group. Her name's Haley Evelyn, and she talks about this notion of the spiritual gym. So it's like just as important as putting the reps in the physical gym, it's putting the reps in the spiritual gym. And that can be, it doesn't mean like, God, church necessarily, but whatever your own practice is, connecting to that, place inside of yourself that is your center of power, and being able to get there and know that that's always there for you. So, as an athlete, having that, taking that time to connect with yourself and be able to get calm and stay focused and stay present, and, stay in control of what you are in control of, and not getting, worried about all the other stuff that's out of your control that can really like shake you. And
Oh, totally. That most people just struggle with. I mean, it's huge, right? That's a huge piece.
yeah, it's hard. And it's, now, I know that, when we had first connected, you mentioned something about, sensing some trepidation about like how I stay in it and stay focused and stay, and it's hard. Like was actually talking to my coach now, Sage Bergner is my coach, and she's absolutely amazing. We've been working together for about a year now. But I saw her last week and she was like, how are you doing? How are you with, keeping going when it gets hard? And right now I'm in this like, peak of training, and, I'm not going to lie. It's like, it's hard. It's hard to stay in it. It's hard. So having, people talk about mental toughness, like being able to suffer through and, grit it out and like, just deal with all the pain. But there's also part of it, I think, that's staying, steadfast and focused on your goal. And that takes a lot of practice. And, for me, I don't know how it is for other people. It's like,
it's hard. It's legit hard. And when you've been in it, so you're 56 now?
I'm
Is that correct?
56.
I mean,
Yeah.
I also believe, like that there's also in my opinion, for many people, there's a certain amount of time too that you can keep that sort of like goal focus and let other things slide because you're so focused. Like I was a very competitive semi-professional mountain bike racer, but like there was like a 7-year span, and then after that you're just like, oof. I mean, there's to be successful in athletics, there's a repetition. You have to keep showing up, and it's just the grind, the day in and the day out, and I think that, in my opinion, can become the most wearing. Like when I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm swimming 3,000 meters again today.
Yeah.
Okay. Like it's just, and I think that's okay. I think like some people find motivation and can continue longer. But I think for many people, there's a season to it,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Yeah.
don't know where you're falling in that. I mean, at 56, it sounds like you're going into the next group, right? That's another
So yeah,
category?
I just aged up into the 55 to 59
Yeah.
division. So last year was my first year in that division. And I had been done actually. After 2019, well, it was COVID, right?
Mm,
So 2020, they actually canceled the games for the Masters.
mm.
And then 2021, I took a break and I was pretty much done. I decided that I wanted to shift my energy to my business and to
Yep.
coaching. And then I did the open. I got sucked back in again.
Welcome back, Leka.
And I did really well that, I came in 20th in the open, and I was like, oh shit, now I guess I should start training. I mean, I had been working out, but I had not been, training. And then I did quarterfinals. And so, you do the open, and the way the qualifying system is now, everybody in the world does the open. So in my age division, there's like 3,000 something women. And then the top 10% from the open move on to quarterfinals. So then it's another 300 and something move to quarterfinals. And quarterfinals is another online round of competition that you do in your gym. It's 4 or 5 workouts. Now they have it over a weekend. Thank God it's not like drawn out over weeks, but they announce it, and there's submission windows. Like you have to do the first 2 workouts and then submit those by Friday, and then the next 2. And I did quarterfinals, and I missed one of the submission windows because so the online qualifiers are, you do the workouts, but you have to videotape them. And the whole videotaping process is like a whole nother like thing. It's like, everything has to be to a certain standard, and you got to show the this and that. And
Yeah.
it's like, that alone is like, but I've been doing it for years, so I'm kind of used to it. But you got to upload your video to YouTube, and then you got to submit the YouTube link. And I did everything, and I was like already moving on to the next workouts, and I just spaced it out. Like I missed, and then it was like 5 minutes after the deadline, I was like emailing. Anyways, I managed to qualify missing one workout. So I squeaked into quarterfinals, and then I, made it. So from quarterfinals, the top 10% move on, or no, the top 30 move to semifinals. And then from semifinals, the top 10 are invited to the game. So I qualified in 8th place that year. So since last year, I've been feeling like I've been behind, kind of, because I wasn't training. I didn't have a coach at that point. I was just like scrambling, but I made it. So I've been like trying to play catch up kind of since then. I ended up in 5th place at the games last year, which I felt great about. I'm not, my body's in one piece. But since then, I did, let's see, I've done 2 more in-person competitions because I felt like I hadn't been competing and I needed some in-person competition experience. So I did the Legends competition in December. I came in 3rd place in that. That's in Cookeville, Tennessee. It's a very big masters competition. It's great. It's people come from all over the world. It's really well run. It's very high level. There's a lot of games athletes that participate in that. And then I did Wadapalooza, which is a huge CrossFit fitness festival in Miami. It's like a big party. I wouldn't say the level of competition is really high, but it's a great competition. I took 1st in that. That was in January. So since then, I have not stopped. Like I've just been training like, all out. And I'm starting to feel like, it's the grind, right? It's having to show up every day in, day out. And but it's like I chose this, right? I have to keep reminding myself I want this. I get to do this. Like how many people out there would be, just dying to be in my shoes? Like I get my life is so different now. My kids are out of the house, excuse me, although they still come back sometimes, luckily. But my work is I work for myself. I can make my own schedule. I have time. Like I remember when the year I first qualified, I was like, what if I could just train for the games all the time instead of, excuse me, the 1 hour I have or whatever. So now I have time and this is what I get to do. And it's freaking hard. It hurts. I'm fighting. I don't have any injuries, but I have like nagging things, tendonitis, and my elbow hurts and my shoulder hurts. And, but I get to do this. Like,
So yeah, a couple of questions, like a couple things to unpack there. Like, you had said on another podcast that there was a big difference in how you felt between like at the games when you were 52 than even when you were 50, and now you're 56. And I'm wondering like what does that evolution look like now that you're in this place? Is your recovery process different? Has your training and nutrition evolved with that? And do you have and I know these are a lot of questions, but like when you look down the line, is it just like, I'm going to keep doing this until I feel like I'm done with it? Or, what is that why? And do you have your eye on some sort of end goal, or are you just like riding the train until you feel like getting off the train?
Yeah, good questions. For me, it has always been like intrinsic motivation. People talk about like being externally. I saw this in my recent ex. He was very extrinsically motivated. Like he'd get into the gym and he'd want to beat everybody in there. For me, it's always been about, I want to reach my own potential. Where can I go? How good can I possibly get? I think it's just who I've been my whole life. It's like, I just want to be the best I can be. Like, how good could I get? Like, and the thing about CrossFit that's so cool is that there's always something else. There's always a new movement to learn. It never gets easier, right? You just get better, or you try. So it's always challenging. I mean, now, I learned how to walk on my hands at 50. Oh, and now you have to do a handstand walk pirouette. And, I can do a legless rock climb. Well, now you have to do it from seated. Or, oh, I've finally figured out how to do double unders. Well, now you have to use a heavy rope, or you have to do crossovers, or like, it's always something different and more. So, as far as like, when am I going to stop? Every year I say I'm done competing, and then I get sucked back in. So I don't know if I'm going to keep competing, but I hope I can do CrossFit forever. I mean, I want to be moving as long as I can and getting strong. And it's definitely, I think more about longevity now. I mean, I feel like it's more of a marathon than a sprint. My body, I feel very different at 56 than I did at 50. The recovery piece, I was talking to Sage about this too yesterday, because I was asking her, I was like, I feel like the level of volume that's expected of me, maybe it's because, so I follow a program called Mayhem Athlete, Mayhem Masters. I've been following it for over a year now, and I love it. I love the programming. It's really like the workouts are fun. It's always interesting. I feel like it's really well-rounded, but the level of volume is insane. It's like literally 3 to 4 hours a day of training, like 4 hard workouts a day, like it's just, and I think it's, the bar has been raised. Like we've all been doing CrossFit now for, I've been in it for like 15 years. So what used to be considered just enough is not enough anymore. Like to be competitive, you just have to do it. Like, and I was, my boyfriend was like, he's like, it's like this is your full-time job, but I'm like, yeah, but I don't get paid for it. Not like they're handing out, huge sponsorships for 56-year-old women. Like, hi, I'm here. Anybody wants to sponsor me? Like, I get some t-shirts here and there, I got a box of swag from Tier. Like, that's awesome. But I'm not making a lot of money at this. So I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it because I love it. And because this is the crazy thing that I've chosen to do. So I spend just as much time recovering as I do training, which is like, so that's all I do. I train.
What does that look like?
So it looks like we got a cold plunge, the freezing cold ice water thing. I do that almost every morning. I get body work done at least once a week. Right now I'm seeing this amazing Chiro PT woman that I found who's awesome. She's a runner. She doesn't think I'm crazy because I do CrossFit. You have to be careful who you talk to, because a lot of times they just tell you, like if I go to a doctor, they look at me and they're like, oh, you're totally healthy. There's nothing wrong. Like, well, I'm like, well, but I have this rash, and the doctor literally is like, oh, but your abs, oh my God, you're amazing. Come. Anyways, that's like a whole nother tangent. But so yeah, you have to find a good, practitioner who can support you and not, think you're crazy. My nutrition is, I'm really super focused on what I eat. I just got sponsored by this amazing meal delivery company called Paleo Zone, and they give me food, which is really great because I'm nutrition is one of my things. I'm a nutrition coach. I'm really into food. I love to cook. I love to eat, but having someone give me food that I don't have to cook, that's organic and clean and healthy, is amazing. So, and I don't have a lot of time right now. Even though all I'm doing is working out, it's just a lot of time is drive. So I drive to the gym. I train at a gym here. I'm in Orange County in Southern California. I train at CrossFit Tustin, which is like 20 minutes. So I do a morning session that's usually an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then I come home, eat, and usually go back. Because this is like the height of games training season right now. So it's 2 sessions. It's a lot of swimming and running too. So the endurance piece really gets kicked up a notch right now, which I love. I love being outside. I love the swimming, and I've grown to love the running. It's ruck runs, running with 20-pound backpack, and then all the other crazy combinations of things. But the recovery piece it's sleep. We all know, right? Sleep is just huge. I didn't know that when I was in my 30s, and I didn't think. I thought it was like okay to not sleep. It's not okay anymore.
Do you sleep well?
I sleep okay. I wear this Aura ring, and sometimes I don't know, like I look, yeah. So sometimes I'll like look at it and I think I did okay. And then I have this really low score, and then I'm like, oh, but I'm not recovered. So sometimes, but yeah, I sleep okay. I would say sleep is something that I've struggled with, like historically in my life. So I do everything I can to sleep. I take magnesium, I take CBD, we wear a mask, I try to dim the lights and all the things, the whole sleep protocol. But I take naps even sometimes, like I still
If you're
feel guilty
training that
about
much,
that.
you should be taking naps. I mean, let's be clear.
Yeah.
Has it been hard to maintain power and muscle?
Yeah. So the muscle thing is interesting because I have noticed that it's harder to keep it on. I mean, for me personally, it's always like, if I stop working out, I feel like I lose it right away. I mean, part of that's maybe in my head, but I've definitely, I have to, if I, I've really got to get the protein. Like we all know that right by now. If you listen to this podcast at all, if you read, any of Dr. Stacy Sims' work, you gotta get the protein. Like it's like crucial. And I still like, some of my clients, usually in general, women undereat, and in especially protein, right? So as an athlete, doing what I'm doing, like that's my main thing, is making sure I'm getting enough protein and the carbs. Like I need more carbs, probably even more. Like I think I just started upping my carbs to like about 100 grams, because with double workouts a day, it's just you need the carbs. So like I take a carb powder. I use Carbolin. I take it with my protein right after I work out, and sometimes during also. So yeah, maintaining the muscle has definitely been harder. Although I have to say, one thing that's amazing is I have PR'd my lifts. Like I'm getting stronger still, which is absolutely incredible.
That's
And
great.
part of that has been working with Sage, because she's a like expert lifting coach. So my technique, focusing on technique. Yeah. I mean, I put 10 pounds on my snatch, like 10 pounds on my clean and jerk. So that's like to hit a PR at this point in life, it's like, it's like amazing, right? It's like totally incredible, and it's still possible. And that's like another thing that it goes back to that mindset piece of like, we have these self-limiting beliefs, and trying to just like break those down. Like one of my clients she's 68. She's a CrossFit Games competitor. And she was like, this year she was super frustrated because she feels like, CrossFit is heading in this direction with all these crazy gymnastic skills, and she's super strong. Like that's her strength, is her strength. And she's like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore because I can't do this. And I'm like, you just stop saying you can't, because I can. And if I can do it, I mean, I'm not like, I didn't grow up with, I don't have a gymnastics background. I wasn't like I don't have like this background. I didn't know how to do anything when I started. I couldn't jump rope. I couldn't run down the block. I couldn't do a push up. Like if I can do it, anybody can do it. And it just takes not having the self-limiting beliefs, belief in yourself, surrounding yourself with supportive people, finding coaches, really having good coaches is key. And having, just the belief that you can. And I think that's a big part of it. So, and that was an answer to your question about
It was. I mean, I'm still like back on you learning to walk on your hands when you were 50. Like that just like
well,
led me
that's
up.
a fear thing.
Because I have
Yeah,
that fear.
it's a
I
legit
used to
fear
be
of
able
falling
to
on your
do that.
face. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to learn how to fall, really. And I actually broke my back when I was in my early 20s. I fell down a flight of stairs. So I have, riding horses, like falling is like a real thing. So yeah, handstand walking I'm still scared of it. And but learning how to fall helps. Like learning how to do somersault and a
Yeah.
cartwheel, which
Yeah.
if you didn't do gymnastics as a kid, like I can climb because I climbed trees, but falling is like a different thing. So yeah, that's
So it was interesting to hear you. I listened to you on the Pharaoh's Fit podcast, and there's this moment where the host was talking about how, well, he could sort of understand like male masters wanting to take testosterone for low T, and I heard you say, well, women's hormones are a journey too, like we lose testosterone and take quite a hit and really can't take testosterone. Where are you now in your menopause journey? And have you ever taken any hormone therapy of any kind?
yeah. I am hopefully done with my period, but so yeah, I had the Mirena IUD for about 11 years. I had 2 different ones. So I got one, after my divorce, and it was great. I loved it. I still cycling, but barely having a period after having very heavy periods. I had never been regular with my period, like growing up. And, it's interesting. Like my mom, was always very like open and talking about, our period, just all that stuff was like out in the open. But as far as like her menopause, like experience, like I remember her taking these herbs, like she was always, we were always taking herbs for stuff, and she was always doing that. But like, she never really like even now when I talk to her about it, she's like, oh, don't get me started. Like, so I didn't really know, but I definitely knew that like taking hormones was bad. Like, I guess maybe it was just something I absorbed or heard about all the side effects. So I never wanted to take hormone replacement therapy. But the IUD was great. And then when I got it, when they gave it to me, it was kind of like, okay, you'll have it for 7 years, and that'll probably take you through to when you're done with, going through menopause, and then we can just take it out and you'll be done. You'll be great. So it had been about 7 years, and I went back in, and I had switched providers because my insurance changed. So I was seeing this new person, and I go in and I'm thinking I was just going to get the thing out and then be done. And they're like, oh, we're just going to put another one in. And they just like put another one in. So that was, another 4 years went by, and now I'm like 55, and I'm like, I want to be done. I feel like I should be not, like in menopause now,
Yeah,
but
you
I was
probably are
still.
done.
So I had my blood work done. And I just wanted to get the thing out. So I got it taken out. This was like about 6 months ago, maybe. And then I started having periods, which was weird. And they, the woman, my new healthcare practitioner was like, well, you'll probably have a few periods and then you'll stop. So I stopped, and then I stopped for 3 months, and then I got another period. So hasn't been a whole year. And according to my blood work, yeah, I should be in menopause. So I think I probably am. I'm still, I have a few hot flashes. I had one yesterday. And I still get night sweats. So I think I'm through it, but the mood swings are still happening. So I haven't ever taken any hormone replacement therapy. Again, my gynecologist is like, oh, you're so healthy, you don't need it. Like,
Well,
well,
I mean, it's safer than they used to think. I mean, it's
right.
largely safe. I mean, you've heard the show, you know that.
Yeah.
And just because you're so healthy, like if you are, the reason to take it is if you're having symptoms that are disrupting your life. And I think I need
Right.
to, just repeat that over and over
Yeah, you
again.
can't say it enough. I agree.
Like that's really it. I mean, people think people are sometimes like, oh, you're not for it, and I'm like, that's not true. Like, I feel
Right.
great. I sleep like a bag of rocks. I have warm flashes, but rarely ever anything. Like, so
Yeah,
I feel no need to go to the doctor and go through the process and do all the things because everything's good, right? My moods are great. But if
yeah,
they weren't, I mean, I'd be the first one knocking at the door, and saying like,
totally.
hey.
I agree. And I know, some of my clients, like I was talking to one recently, and she was like, she had been prescribed birth control because of her symptoms, and it was like not working. Like, it was over prescribed. And then she switched it. And like, so I think finding the right practitioner who you can work with to give you
Yeah,
what you need,
you
like
have to
that, I'm
dial it in.
totally, you have to dial it in. Right. And so I'm all for it. And I'm glad, now that there are viable options for women, because having to just suffer and suck it up and like just think that, oh, that's something that women have to, deal with is just, it's ridiculous at this day and age. So I am fortunate that my symptoms have been pretty minimal, and maybe that is due in part to, the level of exercise, and
Oh,
because my
totally.
nutrition, has
Yeah, those
been
things are
really good.
connected. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's, where I'm at. And with my daughters, it's like, I try to talk to them about it and share with them, as much as I can, because I feel like, thankfully there's more of a conversation about it now. I mean, thanks to you and other, people, like, we're talking about this stuff, and the more that we can share our stories. I mean, I think I learned that at a really young age, like growing up on a commune and feeling like I was always so weird. And then I got to high school and I met these other kids who, they didn't maybe live on communes, but there was a lot of other similar lifestyles in that area. And I realized, like, if we can just talk to each other and share our stories, then you don't feel so alone and so weird. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that for my girls, they're 21 and 24 now.
Mm-hmm.
And my younger daughter had been on, I think actually they both have an IUD now, and or no, anyways, she wants to get off birth control, and she has a boyfriend, and she's actually wants to get the Oura ring so she can track her period cycle, because that's one of the options now. And I'm like, yeah, do it. Like, why should you have to, like, it still just makes me so infuriated that there's not an option for men. Like you
Don't
would
get me
think,
started.
right?
That's a whole
Yeah,
other
right. That's, we
podcast.
could talk about that for hours, but yeah, that, my daughter has to be the one to have this
Totally.
hormone chip in her arm.
Totally.
Like,
Totally.
so yeah, hopefully we're changing that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know, sort of bringing it full circle, you are a coach, you've been a coach, and you work with women now too, right? Largely, like,
Yes.
what
Yeah.
does that
Yeah.
look
My
like?
focus is on supporting women. I've never been one to want to try to tell people what to do. It's always been just this journey that I'm on. But I realize that I just get asked all the time, well, what do you do? What do you eat? How do you keep doing this? And so that's kind of why I leaned into coaching in the beginning, and why I, leaned into just, learning as much as I can and getting all these certifications, so that I could feel, even though a lot of this stuff I've just learned and figured out, like, I want to be able to feel qualified to
Right.
share this information. So yeah, I work with women one-on-one, and I'm more of my work now is these, like, in real life experiences, offering retreats or seminars or workshops where I can, like, create an environment where women are brought together and we're just doing these things. Like, we're working out and we're eating good and we're hanging out and we're connecting. And it's like, it's happening because we're all together. I mean, I know you put on a retreat, so I feel
So
like
great. It, like, the
it's
things that
just,
happen, it's amazing.
yeah, it's like, I mean, I need it. I want it. And I know, I started doing the retreats in the beginning, or right after COVID. And, everyone's like feeling so disconnected and like just out, not feeling good in their body. And we're all going through all this stuff. And like, we just need a chance to reset and get, reinvigorated and inspired. And so, some of the stuff that the ice baths and the breath work and, the meditation and the yoga and just working out together in a group of supportive women who are, trying to up level and learn and grow. So that's what my work is about right now. And then the one-on-one nutrition and mindset coaching is just helping people kind of just figure out what works for them and how they can, get enough of the right things to eat. I think there's just so much overwhelming, confusing information. And like I said, like, most of us are still just sort of have this mindset of we just need to restrict and work out more and eat less. And just trying to support women in learning, how to fuel themselves properly. So that's kind of my focus.
Excellent. 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 Well,
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. And is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to leave the audience, with that we haven't touched upon, or you want to elaborate on, as far as people who want to continue or maybe start pursuing stuff like this?
Yeah, I guess, just a little bit about CrossFit. I maybe this is changing, but I think it still gets a little bit of a bad rap. Like, it's dangerous, or, you can get hurt, or so I think CrossFit is for everyone and anyone, like old, young, adaptive athletes now, so I would encourage anyone to try it. And, it's never too late to start anything, as far as, when you're talking about fitness and wellness and health, and seeking out coaches is always a great way. So yeah, it's never too late to start, really. That's my motto.
That's the perfect place to leave it. Well, that's our show. Come on back next week when I sit down with Joan Swain. Joan is a 65-year-old cyclist and Velocio ambassador who is starting a movement to have older athletes, especially older women, seen. This was a raw, important conversation on invisibility and visibility that you won't want to miss. So come on back for that one. And until then, as always, stay feisty. You've been listening to Hit Play, Not Pause. a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I'm your host, Celine Yeager. The show is edited and produced by the strong, talented, and amazing women at Live Feisty Media. Follow us on social media at Feisty Menopause, and please help us spread the word. Screenshot and share this episode on your social media channels with the tag @FeistyMenopause. Share the show with your friends, and please subscribe, like, review, and rate this show wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth and good reviews make it easier for other listeners to find. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay feisty.